Hello, welcome to Take 10 with the Tennessee Tribune. I'm Sandra Weaver, the editorial director for the Tribune, and today our guest is Chancellor Nicholas Zeppos of Vanderbilt. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we want to talk about a variety of issues on what's going on with Vanderbilt's campus and their connection to the Nashville community. So, Chancellor, you've been there now you've been Chancellor for almost 10 years. And in that 10 years, you've covered a great deal of issues. The first thing I'd like to talk about is what you've done to really increase the diversity of students, faculty on the campus, and how that has impacted Nashville. And I know one of the first things that you did was create, or recently, I think maybe 2014, create Opportunity Vanderbilt, and I may have the year wrong.
Sure. Sandra, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here. And when the Tribune acknowledged Vanderbilt, and I guess me, as one of the Tennesseans of the Year, it really gave me a lift.
Great.
And I think it really signaled to me that I've got a lot more work ahead, and that people were going to talk about what we were trying to do.
Yes.
And so I really, really appreciate that you invited me, and that the interest level in what's happening at our great university in Nashville. So I've been at Vanderbilt almost 30 years. I love the university. I came in 1987, and over time, as I took on more responsibilities, I just always had in my mind that opportunity for people. There's so many good people out there.
Opportunity.
Yeah, it's just, and there's so many people that are gifted.
Right.
That don't know, can I go to college? Is there funding for me? So I'll never forget, I was a new chancellor. It was 2008, and Lehman Brothers had just gone under.
Aha.
Yeah, and so I got the financial crash going around, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to raise money so that any child who comes to Vanderbilt will graduate without any loans.
Oh, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I saw the crippling debt that was happening at that time in America.
Right.
And I saw the unaffordability of college for so many families that made sacrifices to, not go on vacation.
Right.
So
their children can
could. Yeah. And so I wanted to be part of that. And I'm only here, I only have a job because other people did things for me.
Right.
And I've had luck, and I'm educated.
Right.
So how can we not open those doors, throw them wide open for everybody from every race, religion, socioeconomic status? That's America.
Right. It is.
And if you don't have that opportunity in the social mobility, which is a big concern of mine, the country will fail. The project called America.
The project called America. Yeah. So you just see this not just affecting Nashville or this community, but the entire country itself.
Well, I like to always serve our local community because we are in Nashville.
Right.
And we are in Tennessee.
Yes.
And we are in America, and we're on this earth. Yes. So I think one of the things that I'm really turning my attention to is we're global. We're working on a vaccine for Zika.
Oh, yes.
And
which is huge.
And we're studying global religions. But what is our impact on Nashville? How included are we in Nashville? How much are we reaching out to Nashville? Are the kids in all the public schools here who work so hard, do they think of going to school at Vanderbilt? Do they know about Opportunity Vanderbilt?
Right.
So I think we really want to serve locally. It's had a dramatic impact. And
that's what I wanted to know. So you can already see the impact. You're getting more students from Nashville coming into Vanderbilt.
Many more students, and many more students from around the country and around the world, which affirms that they're talented people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different races. And I remember when I first started working in the administration, we had about 9,000 applications to Vanderbilt. And this year, I think we had 32,000.
Wow. For how many seats?
1,600.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
But then we also
amazing.
probably had, 3%, 4% African American students, 20%, 15% minority students back then.
Right.
And I just look at this as a fundamental question of justice and leadership,
Yes.
which is, are you going to go out in the world having gone to school with people just like you? And are you going to be a leader in our world when all you did was go to school with people who look like you and thought like you?
Right.
So you need to bring in the diversity. So, we're probably 45% minority students in the undergraduate population. We're a small school, but we probably have among our peers, the second or third highest percentage of African American freshmen coming to Vanderbilt.
Oh, wow, that's
and
great.
I give Nashville a lot of credit that, kids from New York and kids from Nashville might stay or come.
After graduating.
Yeah.
And that also
build
helps
that community. I'm seeing that.
The diversity of the community.
So the diversity, the socioeconomic diversity, and I bet 65% of the kids are on some sort of scholarship. People call it financial aid. I don't like to call it aid.
Oh, okay.
Well, because these kids earn their way in.
Right, because of their abilities.
Yeah, their abilities. I've got 32,000 applications, 1,600 spots.
Right.
That kid and that family,
right. Yeah.
they earned his or her way.
Yeah, they're in a unique group if they've been selected.
Yeah.
But now so you've been able to change the diversity. Now we have the discussion that's going on today about a travel ban and the changes in immigration. And so when the initial executive order came out January 27th, I know that you said this has an impact on Vanderbilt, and you took a stand on it. Could you talk a little bit about that and how it affects the students at Vanderbilt, what that means?
It had a immediate, chilling, and frightening impact on our community. And I can also tell you that if you go to any other university in Nashville, in Boston, in Palo Alto, it was the same way.
Right.
And what people have to understand is American colleges and universities are really the envy of the world.
And
people come from all over the world
right.
because of our access and our desire to ask tough questions. That doesn't happen everywhere.
No,
So now you're already seeing students on our campus, if I leave, can I come back in the country? And these are students, I had lunch yesterday. I had a student from Nigeria, a student who was born in South America, a student from Zimbabwe, and you can say, well, they're not covered by those 7 countries. How do they know?
They don't.
And what about their families?
Right.
What if they travel through a capital and fly through an airport?
Right.
So it is, the second thing is, we thrive on our diversity. Local, global, national diversity. And if we can't be a magnet for the most talented people around the world, they won't come anymore.
Right.
And what's the American project then? What's American innovation?
Right.
Where's American leadership?
Right.
And we're seeing
question.
declines in graduate school applications already.
Oh, since the travel ban?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a national story. Canada, our neighbor to the north,
Yes.
has been always much more open to immigration. So we're actually seeing a lot of kids that might apply to U.S. schools, Vanderbilt,
They're now applying
MIT,
to Canada.
they're going to go to Canada.
And not even so they don't have to worry about.
Well,
the
can they
travel
get in the
ban.
country? Can they go visit a family? What if
Right.
mom is sick?
Right.
And then where do I get a job?
Right.
Can I stay? We're seeing companies see these talented kids who are international students on our campus. And they say, well, we don't know if we'll be able to get a visa for you.
Wow. So
It's
so
every
it's already
day.
starting to creep
Oh.
into the local economy as well.
Yeah, you're going to see, we're so proud to be in Nashville, and we want to make positive impact on Nashville. We have almost $10 billion local impact.
Wow.
We're with the medical
that's
center,
huge. Right.
I think we're the largest private employer in the state.
I think you are.
I have doctors and scientists and poets coming from
Right.
all over the world
Right. Yeah. To be at Vanderbilt.
to study and rhyme and discover.
Right.
And that's going to stop.
And
That we have to take that into account. There's nothing I'll tell you a story. When Vanderbilt was started, American universities were not the best in the world.
They were not.
No. German and British universities were among the best. So all the great American thinkers, a lot of them went to Germany. And a lot of them went to Great Britain. And then they would come back to America. So why do we think it's kind of a hubris that no matter what we do, everyone will want to come here? So I've spoken out against it. People kind of say, well, why are you getting involved in politics? And I said, politics, this is our mission.
Right.
This is lifeblood.
Right. It affects the students on
every
their
day.
campus. Yeah. And you are global.
We're totally global, but and we're a loving community. And you see I call them children. They're not really children. But you see a kid. I have a student I know is from Syria.
Right.
You're going to tell him to go back home? Well, maybe people would say that's what he should do. But what do I say to him? What do I advise him to do?
Right. What do you advise him to do?
I just, I kind of say to him, come see me, and we're going to find a place where you have the future to grow, the safety of a space, and people want you.
Right.
And I will work on you with that, and I'm going to give you my best advice.
Okay.
But you think of Nashville, too, and the state of Tennessee, and the potential we have to solve healthcare problems, racial disparities in healthcare, opioid crisis. We need all the help we can locally to get the best brains and them stay here to be successful.
Yeah, and Vanderbilt has been a leader in a number of those conversations. And one of the things that caught my attention when you talk about telling that individual student, we're going to help you. You also intervened with another student recently whose insurance would not cover his medical coverage. And what made you get involved at that level?
Yeah, we all have someone we love.
Yes.
It could be a child, grandchild, a spouse. And when one of those students or faculty they're like my family. And how do we, we can be a big bureaucracy.
True.
And, it's just, it can be a labyrinth. And someone is there, my cancer treatment's not working, maybe I get this new treatment, and where do I go? So, it was interesting. I went to bed. I think I'd had an event that night. And I went to bed. I got up in the morning, and now I'm looking at these texts and emails about this child.
Student. Yes.
And the head of the medical center actually was kind of the key point of contact.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because if you know how the bureaucracy of insurance works, and this is a lesson to everybody as we talk about changing the Affordable Care Act, this youngster went and they said, okay, well, that doesn't work. We're going to offer you this treatment. And then, of course, the doctor calls the insurance company and says,
no.
Oh, no.
Right.
So, I was kind of like, Jeff, how can we be one big family and you're doing clinical trials at our medical center that save lives, and then if you walk 100 yards away, you'll die.
Right.
It's inexplicable. And we all know there are rules. I know there are rules about insurance, but it just is inexplicable. Right. And so, by then it had we'd gotten a lot of emails, and it was, they were all really, kind of just urging that we care for a child. Right. And, I then saw this, and then, it's like, okay, I'm going to fix this. Oh, Jeff said to me, don't worry. Jeff said, I'm in touch with you. I'll fix it. Okay. And then I went into work. I saw it at like 5:30 or something in the morning.
A.M., okay.
Yeah, And then I went into work and I said, okay, I know this is going on. The medical center, they're going to fix it. I want to know by 10 o'clock or whatever the time was.
How it's been fixed.
Yeah, how it's been fixed. I don't want to, we'll talk to you Tuesday or call this 800 number.
Right.
And I think I was in a meeting, and I think it was before 10 o'clock. Someone put a post-it before me and said, the treatment's been approved.
Great. Yeah.
And, they're just big bureaucracies, and it's a lesson to everybody, too, because you can be so alone when you need help.
Yes.
And if I can humanize, but I want to make it clear, the medical center people and the people who voiced concern, they were all very helpful. Because I can do things, but it's much easier for me to do things when I think something's right or wrong, and other people say, that's wrong. And I think, you know what? I was right. This is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are other voices to listen to.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
because a lot of times there'll be resistance to decisions that I want to make. So who are the voices? Who's lifting my sails?
Right.
Who's buoying me up?
Well, who is?
Well,
I know you have family. That
you
supports
have your family, and I think that the sorts of efforts that we're making at Vanderbilt to change, to be more inclusive, to be more diverse, to recognize our own history, to see a Confederate Hall, to make a new movie coming out about Perry Wallace, a documentary, the integration of the SEC. I think people take too many victory laps.
Too many?
Well, we integrated the SEC.
Okay.
Well, what's the real history about how hard it was? On campus and off campus.
Right.
So I'm proud.
The story behind all
that. So some history and kind of saying, well, we did a good thing, but what did it take to get there? Because I told the faculty, I said, everyone wants to celebrate, and we should, the March over the Selma Bridge.
Yes.
The I Have a Dream speech, the Confederate Hall renaming, Perry, all these. But people almost died.
They did. Standing
and
up
some
for
people
what they
did
believe.
die.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people did die. So we should celebrate, but we should always remember.
Okay. And then, so talk a little bit more about the renaming of Confederate Hall. We were talking a little bit off camera, and you mentioned that it actually took about 20 years for this to happen.
Yeah. I came to Vanderbilt in 1987, and it's a as people would say, it's a complicated history, and that's a nice way of saying the history of race and slavery and the Civil War is a complicated history.
It is.
And it's a history that's often not told by people, whether it's before the war or the Reconstruction. So there was a building when I came called Confederate Memorial Hall, and I'm kind of sitting in the law school, and I hear about this, and there were some protests. I think the students were protesting divestment in South Africa. They built a shanty town on Alumni Lawn, as I recall. Right. And so, this kind of resonated with me well above my pay grade. And
at that point.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, wow, that's really kind of weird. And, I have kind of two perspectives on it all, which is I grew up in Wisconsin, which, if I go to Civil War battlefields, which I like history, it's like, okay, well, that's where those people from Wisconsin were, and they fought. But then, my relatives came over 100 years ago.
Right.
And it's kind of like, why is everyone kind of like trying to preserve this past? And it was
the pain that went along with it.
Oh, the violence.
Yes, yeah.
The pain, the violence, the exclusion. So over time, it was always controversial. From the day Vanderbilt took it in. It was part of the Peabody merger.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So
one of the most amazing things to me is people would say to me, well, this is part of Vanderbilt's history. And I was like, man, I'm not a professional historian, but if a building was given to Peabody in the 1930s and our university was started in the 1870s, he wasn't a saint, but he was a northerner.
Right.
And he gave ships to Abraham Lincoln so I mean, I'm not saying he was perfect, and he had his own very, very bizarre views, but this is not, I don't get the history part of this. So eventually then what happened was I was the chief academic officer in 2002. Gordon Gee was here. My, brother, friend, colleague David Williams kind of was like, we should change the name of this. Well, it was like Fort Sumter.
Oh, wow.
I mean, in 2002, 2003, and it just, and the community and the alumni and the board of trust, I mean, it was, and, we tried to stand tall, but eventually we got sued and we lost the case.
Right.
And the court said, you entered a contract, you can pay them to get out of the contract. At that time there was no appetite to pay that money because there was so much
Right.
dissent.
And the building initially, when it was constructed, was $50,000, but in today's dollars, it's 1.5.
About 1.5, right.
Yes.
So as I kind of, it's kind of interesting when you've been there so long, and you try to say, okay, we're really imperfect, so we got to do things. I think because I've been there so long, it's like, I got to get certain things done to do justice. And I'm listening to my faculty, my students, my alumni, and I'm seeing what's happening in America in inequality. And then I have Opportunity Vanderbilt, and I say, everyone's welcome here.
Right.
And I've got kids living in a hall that they're like black and white, too. I mean, why am I living in this? What's the memory here? What's the teaching? So I had, I talked to my faculty. The students gave me a wonderful petition to say, you've got to change the name. I went to my faculty. I believe very much in shared governance.
Okay.
I kind of knew what my thoughts were. Because people say, what do you think we should do? I said, I was here in 2003 when we lost the case. You know what I think we should do. So
let's do this.
The faculty, the students, and then I looked at this and, I said to the Board of Trust, I said, you rename buildings. It's your job.
Right.
And so I want to rename this building, but I don't have the power to rename the building.
It has to be the board.
It has to be the board. And this is a moment for you, not to act in fear, but to act, to find true north.
To take a leadership
role. And send a signal that you, the board, care about inclusion and care about equality and care about symbols. So the board formed a committee and I was on it, and it was led by a phenomenal trustee and had a wide, diversity of trustees. And I was on the committee and they said, yeah, we should rename it and we should pay the money back.
Okay.
This was controversial because over the years people had said, well, why are we going to give money to the organization that we disagree with? And, my view of the world was kind of like, are we going to have that building forever?
It's on the campus.
So I went to the board and I said, I don't want to use university money. I'm going to go raise, the $1.5 million. And I'm going to get that money and we're going to pay the other side.
Right.
And a number of donors stepped up quickly.
Oh, great.
Anonymously and quickly.
Right.
And I think we raised the money in 3 days.
Oh, that was very quickly.
And it was interesting. The day that we did this and it was officially done, we immediately just put a temporary pediment over there, so it's kind of blank right now.
Okay.
And now we're going to rename it and we're going to have a big conference on race and history and reconciliation. And it's going to be an academic conference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And when is that coming up?
It'll be next academic year. I've got my good friend and colleague Dennis Dickerson helping me on this. And one thing that really bothered me through the debate was people said, well, you're rewriting history by changing the name. And I said, well, first of all, I don't know that it's part of Vanderbilt's history, but second of all, did that building teach a class?
No, it didn't.
Did it ask a student a question? Does it say to the students, how do you feel with this name? Right. It never taught.
No, not at all.
It never taught. It's a hulking symbol with a name on it that's not teaching. I'm a teacher. That's not how I teach. I don't put a name up and say, don't ask me questions about it. It's going to be there forever. I interrogate. I question. I change my mind. So it was a action on the ground, changing the students, making the faculty more diverse, really serving our staff in much better ways. Much better ways. But symbols are important. Symbols are important. And the change in the name, and I'm in a process of commissioning a number of portraits of prominent African American leaders at Vanderbilt, and we have them scattered around the campus, but maybe there should be some in Kirkland Hall. I mean, Bishop Johnson,
Right.
Perry Wallace, Jim Lawson.
That would be a good thing.
They're in my family.
Yeah.
So there's a wonderful artist. He did a portrait for me, Simi Knox, very prominent, probably the most prominent African American portrait artist in the country. I don't know if you've met him.
I haven't met him, but I am familiar with him.
Yeah, he did President Clinton's portrait.
Yes.
And so he's doing a series of portraits for me, and we'll unveil those next year again to kind of do history.
Okay.
Not to rewrite history, but to say,
But it becomes history.
here's a person that came. What was it like?
Right.
It came in 1952 before Brown against Board. Why? And and then it's always one.
Right.
Take one.
It is, and that person has a story of what they went through.
Yeah. My friend Levi Watkins, who's a TSU graduate, and Levi passed all too early. He's only 10 years older than I am. I used to take Levi around the campus, and I would take Perry Wallace around the campus, and I would take them to the kids because I worry these kids don't have a sense of history. And I would take Levi and I would say to the kid, I'd take a kid's hand, I said, no, touch his arm. I said, this is Levi Watkins. He's our first African American graduate from the medical school. He's not 5,000 years old. He's still alive.
He's still alive.
That shows how recent our history is.
Right. Yeah.
And I take Perry. Perry came on the campus. And a lot of kids think, well, that's ancient history.
And it's not.
It's not. And it echoes through time with acclamation and resistance.
Right.
So when Levi came, he said, I was the first African American medical student in the 60s. I think he graduated in 1970.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's fairly recent.
Yeah, that's not okay. But then he said, the key was they only took one at a time.
One African American.
One African American, and it wasn't like 1, 1, 1, 1, 4. It was 1, 4 years.
Oh, I see.
So it was like, okay, it was this grand experiment to almost titrate little drops to integrate. So we're proud of the things we've done in the past, but yet, there's still a lot of history surrounding all of that.
Thank you, Chancellor Zeppos, for speaking with us today at the Tennessee Tribune. And our conversation is not done. We will pick this up again next week. So we hope that you will join us then.